Welcome to another episode of Trending Up with Edgar de Leon and Sebastian Lopez. We hope you enjoy and are challenged to live life differently as you keep trending up. Hey trenders, welcome to another episode of Trending Up. Today we have a very, I believe, important topic that we're talking about. It's more of a reactionary topic. We've had other topics scheduled for today and for this week, but we really wanted to hone in on what's been going on over the last weekend to try to be relevant with what's going on and what many communities around the United States, especially those in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio, are facing. And so today we're just going to be talking about the reaction to the shootings. You know, we did this a couple of weeks or even months ago, I think, when we talked about the Christchurch shootings in New Zealand. And so kind of just talking and just kind of going through that just because, as we'll get into it, we really feel like this really hits home for us. So, yeah, Edgar, it's fresh, it's raw, it's crazy, man.
Yeah. This is the talk of Twitter, right? Everybody's a politician right now.
Right.
Everybody
That's
is giving their 2 cents on this or that. And my first reaction was, oh, another one. Like it was horrible.
right,
I would just tell you
right.
that it was just like, oh, another one. And
Yeah,
we're getting so common to the point that I thought this morning when I was going to the gym, should I like I could get hurt, I could die out here, just like that. And we
right.
live in a very like safe, like in a safe society. Like I never grew up going thinking that I'm gonna get killed out at the laundromat or at Walmart
Yeah,
or whatever the case is.
right.
So this is something that's like, oh man, yeah, I know it's always like a possibility, but when it's reality, it must be a whole different thing. So, it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
the way that I cope with it is really really interesting. How about you, Sebastian? What's your first reaction to this kind
Man,
of
my
thing?
first reaction, today's August 5th, and so um I was on Saturday. I didn't really hear about it, August 3rd, because I was gonna preach that Sabbath or last Saturday.
Yeah,
So I really just got off. I was like, okay, Friday night and then Saturday all day. I'm just gonna give you off internet and just try to just really,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. Be present.
be in
Yeah,
there
yeah.
and
Where you're at.
yeah. Um, s- yeah, right. So I did that, and someone at my church at the end of it, one of my youth members, Gabe, was like, "Hey, did you hear about Texas?" And I was like, "What?" There was shootings, and I was like, "What?" And then so we got back really late. We had a youth event on Saturday night, so I didn't really get into it. Sunday morning, I'm waking up and I'm about to go see what's going on in Texas, and I see that Dayton, Ohio,
Yeah,
also
yeah.
has people that got shot. So I'm just like,
What's happening?
man, I saw on Twitter someone putting like a conversation that could happen, like you were saying, right? It's like someone saying, "Did you hear about the shooting?" And someone's like, "Which one?"
Yeah,
Especially this last week when you
yeah,
had two. So it's sad to say that this is the reality of our country. It's the reality of the world that we're living in, and I'm sure we can go into reasons why this is happening and whatnot. But I do want to read something that my cousin, I just found it out right before we started recording, and Aniela Rigachi, she's the mother of the triplets that we've talked about before in other podcast episodes, and she's a counselor and a therapist, and she's doing an amazing job, and I'm super proud of her. But she said this on Facebook, which I thought was very appropriate. Do you mind if I read it, Edgar? I don't know if
yeah, for sure.
I'll post it on the notes too,
Yeah,
but she said there's no right or wrong way to react or respond during a traumatic event or crisis. People respond, react. People respond and react in different ways. In the midst of a trauma or crisis, it is not appropriate, nor is it helpful to tell someone how they should react or respond to what is happening. Words and phrases like "just pray about it" or "God has a plan" is not helpful at this time. Though it is true, it's not helpful at this time. You should do this instead of this is not helpful at this time. This can create cognitive distortions. Someone that is experiencing a traumatic event or crisis, someone being triggered by a secondary traumatic event, someone experiencing vicarious trauma is in a high stress and emotional state and is most likely unable to think logically or rationally. Nor should they have to. What is most helpful in connecting with them emotionally, connecting with their right brain. Empathy is extremely important during this time. Take deep breaths with them. You don't even have to say many words when you're empathizing. I am here. I am with you. I see you, I hear you. Traumatic events are happening all around us. People are angry, hurt, depressed, anxious, paranoid. They want to blame someone or blame themselves for what's happening. These are thoughts and feelings that are normal and feelings people are allowed to feel and process. Telling someone to not think or feel is counterproductive. It does not matter if you agree with their thoughts or feelings at this time. You can try to have a logical, rational conversation with them at another time. Everyone has a right to their own processing and healing of traumatic events. If empathy is hard for you due to your own thoughts, feelings, and reactions, I would recommend giving yourself space, giving people space, staying away from social media or news outlets, especially during breaking news events because they can be extremely triggering. To anyone going through a crisis and or experiencing any symptoms of trauma, I am here, I am with you, I hear you, and I see you.
Wow. Yeah. No.
Yeah,
For I read that. I read that before recording, and
yeah,
your cousin's really gifted in the way that she's presenting
yeah, she's talented. Yeah,
how to cope with this, because typically people respond with all different kinds of emotions,
right,
sadness,
right, right,
anger, looking at other people and saying like hypocrisy, like, oh, they're hypocrites, or they're that, this and that. And we see that on Twitter. Like I just, I just
right,
came off of a social media fast, and
right, right,
I got on
right.
Twitter on August 1st, after like being a month off. And
Right, right, right.
honestly, I was my body was not used to, my mind was not used to seeing everybody's opinions about anything and
Yeah,
everything. And
yeah.
I was my body really had this like anxiety induced like
Oh,
reaction.
I bet.
So
I bet.
as this is going on, everybody's saying, well, take away people's guns. And then the opposite are saying, no, guns are not the problem. And we find that everybody's trying to give their solutions to a problem, but it's not the time. It's just,
Right,
it's not,
right,
and
right.
it's really great because Annie, like, she did a great job of synthesizing,
Yeah,
like bringing
yeah.
together what I thought, like how to react. And I'm like,
Right,
she just did a beautiful job of describing it. And we
right,
need to
right,
put that in
right,
the
right.
notes. And if you didn't
Yeah,
really,
yeah. I'll definitely put it on the notes.
if you didn't
Yeah.
capture like the maturity in that paragraph, um, read it, because if you
Mm-hmm.
ever struggle on how to react, if you want to do the right thing, the Christ-like thing, in my opinion, read it,
Right.
and it's gonna
It's to
really,
be there.
yeah,
Right.
just to be there. And
Yeah. You take the instance of Jesus when he goes to Lazarus's grave, right? He sees Mary and Martha, and I'm forgetting who was what, but Mary, I believe, comes and she's there and she begins to like kind of reason with Jesus, like, if you would have been here sooner, he wouldn't have died. Like, where were you? Blah blah. And Jesus
yeah,
is like, talking to her, hey, if you believe in me, he'll rise her again, right? And then he goes to
mm,
Martha, and I might be getting my women mixed up, so forgive me, but Martha is really just all she says is like, if you would have been here sooner, he wouldn't be dead. And then it says, the next verse says that Jesus began to cry, and I think that he was not, obviously he wasn't crying about Lazarus because he was about to raise him up, but it's more like Jesus was there with whoever he was talking to,
yeah,
empathizing. So if the person needed to talk logically and reason, he's there. But if the person just needed to cry, he's crying with them.
yeah.
So
Which
I think,
empathy, right?
yeah,
Like empathy, my understanding is not saying, oh, I'm sorry. Empathizing
right,
is
right, right.
trying to connect to what's happening in their life, and feeling what they're feeling, and through that experience, like have that bonding experience, and like, this sucks,
Yeah.
or this is horrible, and just being like,
Right,
I
right.
mentioned it 2 weeks ago. The aunt that's like a mom to me suffered like a devastating
Mm-hmm.
stroke. Right now she's in the ICU. And a lot of people
Mm.
are like, my little brother, who's probably listening to this podcast, is like, what, like, this sucks, like, it's horrible, he's there, I'm not,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
you can't do much but be there. you know it's not
Right.
about
Right.
because she's conscious now, and she's able to
Yeah.
understand like a little bit what's going on. And he's like, what do I do? This is kind of weird, awkward. But I'm like, just be there, like, be there. and,
Right.
and
Right.
because I've been around people who've been dying, like, literally in front of me.
Mm.
And it's just like, I'm not gonna be there like, oh, trusting the Lord. It's just,
Right.
that is already, that its place is true, but it's not the, like, it's
Mm-hmm.
already either been done, or you're not
Yeah.
there right
Yeah.
now. And you just gotta be there with that person. So I found
Yeah.
that very
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah,
So
there's definitely a time and place for everything, but empathy, you can never go wrong with empathy. And
yeah.
I'm gonna link a video about what is empathy. It's very great, animated, just in case you're wondering. Okay, is it sympathy, empathy? What does it mean? But moving on to what actually happened, we just kind of want to cover the facts. I'm sure you've all heard it, but we just kind of want to process them ourselves. Pardon me if we get emotional because this kind of touches at home, especially with the one in El Paso. But the first shooting, El Paso, Texas, there was a shooting at a Walmart there, connected to a strip mall. Edgar, what's amazing is that there were there in El Paso the parents of Joaquin, who was a student that was killed in the Parkland shootings in
Wow.
Florida,
Wow.
were in El Paso trying to help and visit those that were in the detention centers, right?
Wow.
And so I was at the gym listening to not an NPR podcast, but the Daily. I forget who does it, but they were interviewing them, and I was choking up in the gym, right, doing my reps
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
getting tears in my eyes because I'm hearing and they're just like, we came here to help others, and then there's shootings here again, and so it's kind of like the traumatic experience, right? It's the second time they're kind of going through that traumatic experience, right? And a secondary traumatic event, whatever it is, right? They're going through, and so it's just amazing. What is the coincidence that again they go to a place to help others in the memory of their son that was killed at a school shooting, and they're in the same town and area where there is now a shooting at a Walmart. So
Mercy.
El Paso, for those that don't know, is in Texas. It's a border town
Border
there.
town. Yeah.
It's been known. It's been known that it is one of the safest cities in the United States of America for I don't know how long, but if you look it up, El Paso has a great record of safety. So it's not under the premise of like, oh, it's a border town, so
Yeah.
it's unsafe.
Yeah.
But 20 people are dead. There were 6 Mexican nationals, meaning that they're in border towns. This would happen a lot in McAllen, where I'm from. People from Mexico would come over to
To
Walmart or
shop and whatnot. Yeah.
HEB, yeah, to shop and to the mall and to get
Yeah,
stuff.
and
So
by
there
the
were
way,
6
they're
Mexicans.
legal,
Yeah,
right, Sebastian? They're
legally, right, legally
citizens, right?
crossing.
It's
Yeah,
horrible
and
how
you should see how. Yeah,
we have to make that
yeah,
distinction.
you have to.
Anyways,
Right, right. So there were 6 Mexican nationals that were killed. The Mexican government is trying to get in because obviously it's their people that got shot too. So they want to do something and pursue some legal action. One of the victims, get this story, was Jordan Anchondo. She was 24, who died while shielding her 2-month-old son.
mercy.
Her aunt Liz Terry told a CNN, a mother of three, she was shopping for back to school supplies when she was shot. The baby, they say, is still had her blood on him.
Yeah.
You watch these things and see these things, and you never think what is going to happen to your family. How do parents go school shopping and then die shielding the baby from bullets, man?
Yeah.
Can you imagine, like, you're shopping for school supplies and someone comes into Walmart? So 20 people are dead, at least 26 injured. This can change, obviously, as more information comes out. Concerning the shooter, he's 21 years old. We don't want to say his name, but he drove from Allen, Texas. Allen, Texas is near Dallas. Texas is huge, so it's about 600 miles from Allen, Texas to El Paso. He drove 600 miles, or about 9 to 10 hours, to commit a killing. Let that sink in, right? He could have gone to any other Walmart in his area, but he goes to a place that has been in the news currently because of Beto O'Rourke, one of the Democratic presidential candidates, and because of their stance and what they're trying to fight for, and because of the tension, and because detention centers, and because it's a place where we know that there's a lot of immigrants, whether legally or illegally, coming in, and so goes to El Paso to create havoc. What gets me, Edgar, is that my family also lives in a border town.
Yeah. Yeah.
My family lives in McAllen, that's borders Reynosa, and to think that someone could have driven I live 8 hours south of Dallas or Allen, Texas, near their area. Where I live, it's about, I would say, 85% Mexican, if not more. And to think that my parents could have been at a Walmart or at a Target or at a HEB and suffered the same fate, you know?
Yeah.
So when I read that news, I'm just thinking like, man, man, it just leaves you speechless. You know, you just
Yeah.
speechless, man.
No. It's absolutely. I mean, what can I say? Like
Right.
this thing, and like we're gonna make a for our listeners, we're gonna touch on like politics, not because we're politicians or we are experts in politics, but politics
Right.
and your Christian experience and like what the scripture says and what we think is like biblical and stuff. That's for later episode. But like, I mean, what can you say besides
Right.
what a horrible reality? My parents also live an hour
Yeah.
from Mexico, so that's would that, it's not considered a
Yeah.
border town, but it's pretty darn close to
But pretty
the
much,
border.
yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like
Yeah.
what we find is that this gentleman, not, oh mercy, I take that back. This man who
Yeah.
came and
Yeah.
and destroyed several lives and has affected and traumatized others by the waves of this scene. Um, it's sick. It just reminds you of a horrible world that we live in. Its sin is destructive, right? Satan wants to destroy, and
Right. Right.
humans are play along with his plots. And it's just like these moments of just, uh,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
the,
heartbreaking.
the
Then, yeah.
the Bible
Yeah.
gives us a story that one day we won't be crying, you know, and it's not like
Mm.
the answer to this problem, but it's a as we shed tears, we know that we won't be shedding them forever. So mercy.
Yeah. And what's crazy is that the shooter had like a manifesto or kind of like why he did it that was published in 8chan, which is a um, online message board. It used to be, I think, 4chan, and now it's 8chan because the other one got banned. But it's gotten filled with racist and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and whatnot. And in that manifesto, he details what he's gonna do and why he's doing it, and he's just, it's filled with white nationalist and racist hatred toward immigrants and especially Hispanics, blaming immigrants for invading the United States, for taking jobs, right, for blending cultures and losing what it means to be United States of America. I'm not sure. So the synopsis is like the Latinos are invading and you got to get rid of them, right? Um, and yeah, so it's tough, man, to see that it's just not like a random, like he was intentionally going to go hurt Mexicans and Latinos and Hispanics. It's just, man, it breaks your heart.
No, no, and
Yeah.
um, as the idea behind our podcast is trending up. It's
Right.
trending towards heaven. When we're trending up, we have moments that's like we're trending down, like especially for those
Right.
families who are affected. I
Right.
mean, we're affected as a byproduct, but we're not directly affected. I just pray for all the families that have this horrible scene stuck in their minds of their
Right.
losing their loved ones, and it's hard to trend up when you have this moment. So like, um, there's like my inner me, right? What people call the spirit. Not it's just
Yeah.
sad, you know. It's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this sucks.
It's heavy. It's heavy. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's heavy stuff. But you know what? It didn't stop there. 13 hours after
Right.
the El Paso shooting, there was the Dayton, Ohio one. 9 people dead, 27 injured.
Hmm.
The
Man.
guy, the man used a an assault rifle, what people call assault rifle, but he was also wore body armor. And
And I heard he was wearing an earpieces, like in order to not hear
wow,
noise.
wow,
So
wow. Especially with the loud shots, with
right.
guns.
Right. 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 Right.
And then his sister was killed in the very attack,
Right.
and there isn't a from our time and point in time in our research, there isn't an exact reason found.
Right. 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 Right.
We find
Yeah. They.
this
Yeah. Yeah.
ugliness of this world, right? There's a lot of beauty in it,
Right.
but there's can be this
Right.
ugly moments. Ah,
It's a lot. It's a lot, man. And yeah, I think just going back to the El Paso shooting, I think it's just important to note that as we talked about, as we will, this actually we haven't even released it. So the podcast episode next week, following this one, speaks about the power of the mind and the importance of our words and what we think and what we behold. And I think it's important to keep the people that are leaders, whether locally, globally, nationally, accountable of the words that they and ideas that they promote, right? Because we don't understand, and you'll hear it next episode, the impact that our words have on others and what we behold, we become, right? This idea. And so it's crazy that there's people believing that there's invasion coming, right? And now they're taking it into their own hands to make sure that it doesn't happen.
yeah.
But with the Dayton, Ohio one, they don't know what if there's a reason, if it was racist, if it was just for some reason, at least that we haven't found yet. But it just
Yeah.
shows obviously the condition of the world, unfortunately, that we live in, the broken world that we live in, and how it just feels like it's getting worse and worse. I don't know if it's because we just have more coverage of it, and now we can see it, and it's more fastly available, through social media and through news outlets. But it just feels like this is happening all the more, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
and it's heavy, yeah.
no, I was gonna mention that that thoughts. We mentioned this basic idea that's found in scripture too,
Mm-hmm.
that your thoughts have a direct correlation to your actions. So if you harbor thoughts that are evil, against, violent, whatever the case is, they will manifest and they will grow to
Mm.
be
Mm. Right,
actions, and that is the
right,
worst thing. That's why um, the words that we use, the words that our president uses, the words that your wife
yeah,
uses, your child
yeah,
uses, whoever's around you, those words have an effect. And actually,
right,
it's
right,
found in the biblical principle of God saying something and creating it, and then that is continually it's compounded with Abraham saying he believes in God and he was counted righteousness. So this is like in
right.
depth, and I know our next podcast is going to go into it, but it's true. Like your words have an effect,
Mm-hmm.
and we find that's the case. So like when it comes to our reactions, what are we going to create in others? Are we going
Right,
to
right,
create
right,
more
right, right.
anger in the other person? Are we going to create more self righteousness? Because there's a lot of self righteousness on both sides. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of self
Right,
righteousness on the side that's what, or let's just call it the elephant in the room, the gun approving
right.
people and the people who are against guns.
Yeah,
There's self righteousness on
right,
both sides. I'll tell you that
right,
because
right.
typically it's more conservative versus liberal, right? But both especially like ideologies and their parties behind them are lacking in a full perspective of truth,
Mm.
and that's why
Wow.
you can't just, in my opinion, be identified with one because um, they're not perfect, and I think,
Right, right, right.
and that's why as we think and as we grapple with this idea,
Yeah.
we don't want to make this just political or left, right, or right,
Right,
but you
right,
want
right,
to be, how can you be there for your brother and sister who's hurting,
right.
uh,
Yeah, going back to empathy,
right?
right? Just
Yeah,
the
no,
idea of like
absolutely.
whether you agree politically or not, empathy. Something that I think I just want to say. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to remember correctly, but Luther in his Revolution and his 95 Theses and his fight against what the Catholic Church was doing at the time, at his time, right, in the Reformation, uh, in some way, right, through his writings and his rhetoric, sparked a war
Yeah,
that came,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
an
yeah,
actual
yeah,
war,
an actual
and
war.
it wasn't what he
Yeah,
wanted, right? Didn't want a bloody war. He
yeah,
wanted to just call it out. And one that is what ends up happening is that someone can take the idea that even though you may think it's harmless, and they'll take it and multiply it to 100, and it'll come back to you because you planted that seed even though you didn't know, and so that's why when the Bible says that the tongue has the power of life or death, and what we say should be used to build people up, not to bring others down, is because not only is it our thoughts, and we'll talk about it next episode again, but the impact that our words and our ideas have on others that will take it further than what we even wanted. We got to be mindful of that, and we got to call it out when that happens, and when our leaders are promoting agendas and ideas and thoughts that others are taking to extremes like this, something's not up. But some questions that we want to just leave on the table and just have you chew on it. I know Edgar and I are chewing on it. We're not going to answer them now because, one, we're not aware enough of the conversation to to have a proper answer, and we don't want to get into it
yeah,
right now. But questions that come to mind, right? Obviously, we don't want to politicize these shootings. Obviously, there's real people that are hurting, that have lost loved ones, and our hearts go out to them. But it begs the question at this time too: is like, what do we do about the condition of the mass shootings that happen seemingly every week now, where there's shootings that are happening, right? And the questions are always, should we ban guns? What does that look like? People say, don't touch my guns because they're protected under the Second Amendment. Questions that I have: can there be freedom for people to have weapons, and yet at the same time safe mechanisms or structures or systems in place to ensure the safety of many? Does passing gun laws or having gun reform destroy completely the ability for owners to have guns? We need to pass gun laws that will limit the accessibility to those who should not have it, which I believe, but that will not hinder those that can from possessing weapons themselves, right? So you want to limit those the weapons from the hands of those that are evil and have ill intent, but allow those that want it for some reason to have it. Obviously, it's a free country, and we stand by freedom and liberty. The struggle that I find,
Go for
yeah,
it. Go. You,
the struggle that I find is respecting both freedom of choice, but also limiting those who can do harm, right?
yeah,
Because
and that's in
it's
that.
a hard
Yeah,
balance
it's
to
a hard
find. You
balance
know,
because
how far, what side do you lean more towards? Are you more restricted or are you more free?
yeah,
Um,
because freedom then demands the ability to hurt others. So
right. That would fall under the freedom of someone to be able to.
exactly. So what we find,
Right.
and again, this is not we're not politicians. We don't know politics and stuff. Oh, I can't.
Yeah.
I won't speak for you, Sebastian. But
Thank
I
you.
was I was gonna mention um that the Constitution, our Constitution,
Right.
our country's Constitution, is extremely valuable. I have a lot of respect for it. So if
Right.
we go into, because I know the other side of the story, if we try to affect the Second Amendment, what else will fall? So we
Mhm.
find this
Mhm.
idea of like wishy-washy kind of thing, but um it's true. Like these are the things that our politicians are struggling with. Why don't we pray for them? This is
Right.
hard.
Right.
This is not easy.
Right. 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 Right.
It's hard.
It's tough, and I honestly don't know what the answer is. Obviously, we're not in politics. We don't know the legal language or lingo. But the reality is that we can't keep having this, right?
Yeah.
We can't keep having this and allowing people to have access to such weapons that can create. Listen to this, right? It the police in Dayton, great job by them, stopped the shooter after just 30 seconds of him shooting.
Amazing. Amazing.
And how many people did he shoot and injure in 30 seconds? He killed 9 people in 30 seconds and injured 27.
Wow.
So the police officers that were doing a patrol, because this happened at 1 a.m., 2 a.m.,
Yeah.
they were doing a patrol and walking around the bars that were closing at that time, stopped the shooter in 30 seconds, under a minute. And in under a minute, the shooter had already killed 9 people, injured 27, and he was going full steam into a bar that had been just packed. There's videos of it, and it's amazing. You see all these people running into it. So if he just breaks loose, man, it's kind of like the shootings in Orlando at the I just went blank on the name of the
Pulse.
of the bar, but
Pulse.
the Pulse shootings, right? You know how the shooter came in and everyone, it's just so thankfully the security, the police officers acted in time and all that. But 30 seconds. So just thoughts for us to think about today, and more than anything. I know we hear thoughts and prayers all the time, but we do want change and stuff. But at this moment, what people that are affected by this, whether closely affected or more further away, we need to be empathetic to others. And I think that theme will come up when we talk about politics and all these things later on. It's just like, I'd rather empathize and make sure that everyone else is doing good than sometimes even having it my way, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like that's what God is calling me to do. Like sometimes there are things that I could do freely and freely. God's like, hey, yeah, you can do that, get that, whatever. But there's things I don't do or take advantage of because I don't want to be a stumbling block for others,
Yeah.
or I don't want, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but
As it develops, but
as it develops,
as
but
our listeners think about this,
yeah.
let's hone in on the idea of like how can we help our brother? So like we got, so for those believers, you understand that God loves you, so then you want to love him and blah blah blah.
Right.
Then
Right.
you also want to love your neighbor. So how can you love your neighbor? How can you love your neighbor
Right.
who's hurting right now? How can you love your neighbor who's outraged right now? How can you love your neighbor who does not think that gun restrictions are the answer? How can you love your neighbor who is
Right.
blank? Think about
Right.
that before
Right.
you post whatever. My favorite, one of my favorite preachers, Ty Gibson, he put his opinion about the Second Amendment
Mm-hmm.
today, and
You got
he's
it.
already he challenges the status quo a lot in theology,
Right.
but
Right.
he talked about he's been talking about politics recently more, as the political climate has heated up, and he's getting chewed
Mm-hmm.
out. Like he's like
Right. I
putting
bet.
on Facebook like not apologies but like clarifications, and I haven't seen him do that
Right.
before
Right.
because people are getting so riled.
Right.
So instead of getting caught up with that kind of defensive nature, think about how can you
Right.
love your neighbor and how can
Right.
take the criticism if you think it's just or not, but then how can you love them? Not don't swing
Mm.
your fist if someone swung at your face, but how can you stop it?
Right.
How can we stop
Right.
this? And this
Right.
is something that we struggle with, that we're gonna wrestle with, but we
Mm-hmm.
should. If you think it's easy, then you're wrong. If you think it's I know, right? That's funny. I'm already
You're
you're
wrong.
wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're wrong. Wrestle with it. Continue. If you
Right.
stop wrestling, you're gonna
Yeah.
stop getting stronger. So that's my
Yeah.
closing
And
statement
yeah,
as we
that's two
wrap this
cents.
up.
Yeah. Good. Closing statements on this side. Defendant. Now, I think just put yourself in someone else's shoes. What if you're the mother that's crying over the death of your son, or your wife has just been shot, and so it's just putting yourself in that position. Everyone says, you never know, you never think it's going to happen until it happens.
Yeah.
And to the fact that we live in a place where that is a very real thing that could happen to any of us that are here, Edgar and I, or to anybody listening, that this and watching, this can be a reality for many of us. That's crazy. So we leave that with you guys. We're sorry that's more of a gloomy and darker thing.
But there's
I've been
gloomy and dark
really,
days in the year, right?
it has been, yeah, and I think, Chantal's been asking me every day since Saturday, just like what's going on. Like it's heavy. It's been heavy, just because I feel like it hits home for me, and you're just tired of seeing it, It's just tired of seeing it. But we hope that as you wrestle this with the good and bad in life, that you're able to empathize with others, and in the same way, fight for the protection and for the ability for others to live in this world. And so we just invite you to empathize with others, put yourself in other people's shoes, and as you do that, you will keep trending up. We love you guys. We'll talk to you later. Peace. Thanks for joining us today. Make sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate us and share our content. Learn more about us by checking out our website. The link is in our show notes. From us to you, muchas gracias, and always keep trending up.